Zozibini Tunzi is Miss Universe 2019. She's the third South African to win the Miss Universe title. Zozi made history by being the first black South African winner to do so in her natural short hair when she was crowned in December 2019.
I grew up in a world where a woman who looks like me with my kind of hair and my kind of skin was never considered to be beautiful. I think that it's time that that stops today. I want children to look at me and I want them to see my face and I want them to see their faces reflected in mine. This is what I told the judges the 2019 Miss Universe pageant in Atlanta, Georgia, where I became the 68th Miss Universe. Now, let me tell you why this is important, not only to me, but hopefully for everyone else. The first Miss Universe pageant was held back in 1952 when Black women weren't even allowed to be a part of any global beauty pageants across the globe. Miss Universe crowned their first Black Miss Universe in 1977. And as of today, there's only a total number of 6 Black women who have won the pageant. Yes, only 6 in all the 68 years that the pageant has been running. If the 5 Black women who came before me looked at the reality of the statistics and gave up, I surely would not be where I am today. It is because of those women that I got crowned today. They gave me permission to be who I am. They held my hand and said to me, "You too can be Miss Universe." I'm proud to say that I'm the first Black Miss Universe to win the pageant with my short, natural hair, or as I like to call it, my natural crown. Now, as many of us here today watching and present in this summit, we are all here because of women who came before us. So let us never make that mistake of thinking that we are here just mainly because of ourselves. It reminds me of an African proverb, umntu ngumntu ngabantu, meaning we are people because of people. And I also told the judges that night that the most important thing that we should be teaching young girls today is leadership, that it is something that has been lacking in women and girls for a very long time. Not because we're not capable or because we don't want to, but because of what the world and society has labeled women to be. I think we are the most powerful beings in the world and that we deserve every opportunity. Opportunity, that is what we need in order to transform our world for the better. We need more voices to speak up for political and economic and social change. We have a massive problem with a lack of representation and diversity in the world. Everywhere you look, there's an imbalance and something has got to change. In fact, we need more women's voices. We need women to be louder and to be fearless. And so this is a call to action for everyone to brave up and to challenge status quo. Because being silent is never a solution. In fact, it's always a contribution to the problem. I have come across a few people in my life, and I'm sure that you have as well. People who love status quo. People who say that they came into the world and it was this way, and therefore they will leave it this way. Because nothing will ever change, and I refuse to hear that. I refuse to believe that. In fact, I say that they are wrong because we can, in fact, change the world. If we refocus and realize how powerful our voices can be together when we speak up and when we act. And as somebody who picked up this torch from all these incredible women who came before me, I see it as my responsibility to pass it on to the next generation of women. I want them to see their faces reflected in mine, are words that I would like to hear being echoed through generations in time. I want them to see their faces reflected in mine. When women hear these words, I want them to know never to put limit to their dreams. I want them to know that everything is possible. When I won the Miss Universe title, I'd hoped that my reign would be unique. I wanted my year to be one that was different, that was memorable, one that was special, and sure enough, it was. In the most extraordinary and unexpected way. A little more than a year ago, the world was just beginning to learn about a global pandemic that's called the COVID virus. Virtually overnight, the world changed, our lives changed. I remember when I first realized what this meant for my year of reign. One of Miss Universe's essential duties is to travel the world, to speak on causes that are dear to her heart and that of the organization, and to do philanthropic work. But this past year, things were different for me because, like most of us, I had to do my work virtually. We all had to figure out ways to accomplish our goals in a different way. And I thought to myself, you know what? Women have been doing this for centuries. Women are problem solvers. We've always been able to come up with creative solutions. And so I figured out a way to fulfill my duties from home. I quickly made peace with what was happening because I knew that I was not the only person going through this. And I knew that I had to remind myself of why I wanted to be Miss Universe in the first place. Yes, traveling was a huge part of the job. That was not going to happen anymore. But what is the most important thing has been and will always be the people. Remember the African proverb, ngabantu. When I started, I wanted to use my voice to influence and to play my part, no matter how small it was. I wanted to make a difference or leave a message to people who would come across the words that I'd said or the things that I'd done. And so when the pandemic hit, we all had to be creative and we had to think outside of the box and come out with ways that I would be able to do my job. And so that's why, together with the Miss Universe organization, we created a virtual platform called Universe United. When we started out this venture, we realized that people were lonely. They were sitting at home and just being scared of the pandemic. And we wanted to create a safe space where we could say to people, hey, let's all be together while we are apart. It soon grew into something incredible, where I started a live stream of interviews where I would bring in people from all different platforms of the world. I spoke to psychologists, I spoke to medical doctors, I spoke to activists, I spoke to members of the LGBTQ plus communities, to UN women, and so many more people. And the goal was to bring people together to have impactful conversations, much like this summit here. Yes, to educate us, but to also entertain us during the pandemic. Now, as we all got accustomed to this new way of life, I had a heartbreaking realization that while I was worried and concerned about not being able to travel, there were actually women and people across the world who had life-threatening situations. You know, people were worried about where they were going to get their next meal. We had people being concerned about how they were going to send their children to school because they had lost their jobs. People were worried about not being able to afford good hospitals because the ones that they have in their communities were either understaffed, falling apart, underdeveloped, or all of the above. One of the biggest things that we were told by the World Health Organization is that in order to flatten the curve and to make sure that we decrease the spread was to wash our hands and to wear our masks and to go into isolation. Now, this might sound simple to somebody like you and I, but what about other places across Africa and the world that have no access to water? What about people who have no access to masks? And isolation on its own is so difficult, but imagine how it is when you are a family of 10 living together under a one-roof home in an informal settlement. What about those people? What I'm saying here is that the pandemic really drew a painful and clear line between the privileged and the underprivileged, especially in Africa. Africa is a mighty continent. We make up 20% of the Earth's landmass, and we make up 16% of the world population. If you also investigate on our history, it is not hard to find that Africans have been through the worst of times. We have been enslaved. We have been colonized. We have been marginalized for centuries. And tragically, here we are looking at this reality that has divided Africa so much, where we clearly see poverty. And we clearly see people who are more privileged than others. I imagine that this is not the Africa that our ancestors envisioned for us. We are an exceptional, caring, and compassionate and resourceful people. So let us start showing it and living up to it, but this cannot be done in isolation. This worldwide event should be a wake-up call and should be a call to action to our African leaders to take a look around and see that this is who we have become. This is our reality. We need to do better than this. So let's be better. Let's do better. Before I end, I want to say that even though we went through the most challenging year of our lives and we're still working through it, that we are still here and we're still standing. And I also want to call on all of us today to live up to the expectations of our ancestors and the world that they dreamt for us. I have heard so many times that humanity doesn't exist in the world anymore. But I'm happy to say that humanity actually still does exist. I've seen it this past year. I saw people giving off their time, giving off their skills, giving off financial support to people who needed it the most. And so I'm very proud to see of where we are today. And even though we're still fighting, working, praying to leave the pandemic behind, may we keep this giving part of ourselves ongoing. I want to thank everyone here today. I want to thank the Forbes Women Africa team for including me to being a part of this virtual summit. I've learned so much from the women who've came before me in the past. And hopefully with your help, I will be one of those women too who continue to speak out for injustice and to promote equality. After all, I want to remind you again that our African proverb says, we are people because of people. Diabulel. Thank you.